Ryoma sees the creature and cuts it in half. He sighs heavily. The phone rings. He explains that his name is Seonji Ryoma, and he's an ordinary student. He asks if they'd be interested in knowing why he fights monsters, and he's going to tell them everything in order. Ryoma explains that 3 hours ago he was in his home world. He says that on weekends, he devoted all his time to his hobbies. Reading novels, watching cartoons, and playing games. Ryoma believes he can't be called a Zuyuri. Ryoma is on the phone, happy with the outcome. He says it was easier this time, but he had to donate a substantial amount. It's still his parents' money, though. Ryoma explains that his ancestors owned one of Japan's largest corporations, and other family members are also very influential, either doctors or politicians. He says he's the only one who doesn't stand out in any way. Ryoma says that his cousin always makes fun of him. His friends throw dirt at him behind his back, and even his girlfriend cheated on him with another guy, not caring about his feelings. He says there's nothing he can do about it because everything he owns belongs to his parents, including this room. Ryoma has never held even a part-time job in his life and has achieved nothing. Seonji says he'd prefer to hide the truth about his origins and live a peaceful life, but secrets always come to light, and when that happens, people will ridicule him. He believes they'll definitely be disappointed in him. Ryoma reflects that their last name is on everyone's lips, but he really wants to know what he's capable of without it. He sighs. Seonji thinks this is unlikely. Ryoma looks at the books. He says that reality is already getting to him and how great it would be to visit another world. A voice rings out, telling him his wish has been granted. Seonji is surprised, and a flash of bright light appears. He opens his eyes and is surprised that he was just in the room and asks where he is. The phone rings. Ryoma says this is a notification. The boy is surprised by the icons on his phone. Seonji says the phone now has a translator, inventory, quests, and a store. He doesn't understand where he got these apps from. Ryoma says he has a message, although it doesn't seem to be the email he used. Welcome, Seonji Ryoma. He says his wish really did come true and asks if it was a dream. A message on his phone says that Ryoma only had a phone, so someone slightly improved it to make it useful. Seonji understands where all these apps come from. The message states that before transferring Ryoma to their world, he had to change his race to make his body more resilient to unusual stress. He wishes him luck and suggests enjoying the journey. The message contains a wish that the heart will show the way. Ryoma asks if he's serious about traveling a world he never even dreamed of. He can't believe it. Ryoma wonders what he'll become, a werewolf or an elf, and notes that it feels like little has changed. He then asks if he can look it up on his phone. The screen says he's level 1. The guy says he's a demigod. Ryoma is surprised that he is a demigod and has become even younger. Seonji thinks this kind of thing is rare in games and anime. He tries to remain calm and simply browse the internet, reading the information. Ryoma learns that demigods are a special race granted a divine blessing. Their members are imbued with immense power and live much longer than humans, but are not immortal. There used to be only 5 demigods in Mura, but just recently another one appeared. Ryoma asks if they're talking about him and claims that things are much worse than he thought. The boy says that if many people find out about his race, he won't be able to live here either. He remembers being told to enjoy himself, and also that he's in another world. Ryoma says that if that's the case, he needs to go all out. He says he'll start with clothes and asks if he's wearing the equipment from his inventory correctly. Seonji draws his sword and says it's a real sword. A notification about a new mission arrives on his phone. The notification contained information about a divine quest that required donning clothing and arming oneself. The quest was completed, and the reward was 10 divine points and a sword skill. Ryoma reported that he seemed to have completed some quest without realizing it, and added that there was even a tutorial. He announces that he now has a skill and divine points that he can use to buy all sorts of things. Ryoma says that's cool. Ryoma says he'll try his best. He's been transported to another world and needs to improve his status by slicing up some slimes and buying a place to live. He explains that first and foremost, he needs to complete his training and level up. Sionji reports that completing quests has become much easier, then strikes the monster with his sword. Ryoma sighs, showing his hands covered in blood. He explains that instead of extracting magic stones from the bodies of defeated enemies, he thought that after the monster's death, all the loot would automatically appear in his inventory. Ryoma explains that he was terribly tired and decided to continue training the next day. Ryoma reports that he spent the reward of 10 skill points and 10 divine points on various items, skills, and apps, such as a map, a traveler's cloak, a purification and healing skill, and a magic textbook. The moment he'd been waiting for had arrived. Ryoma is surprised and asks if this is magic. It's a waterbending skill. He explains that he learned it while leafing through a magic tutorial and hopes it will work. He says all that's left to do is do this and shoots a stream of water at the wall. Ryoma says it turned out almost exactly as he imagined, but he still wasn't strong enough. Then Ryoma says he needs to pull himself together and move on to the next quest. The training tells him to leave the forest and head to the city. Ryoma is happy. He's been waiting for this. Ryoma says he has no idea where he's ended up. Ryoma walks through the forest, holding his phone. He says he was so eager to get to the city that he got lost and asks where he should go, then says that the sun is already setting. Ryoma reports that it looks like they'll have to spend the night in the open, and thinks that they should at least light a fire. The wolves attack. He curses and thinks they smell fresh meat. Ryoma reports that there are a whole bunch of wolves around and nothing can be seen. Then Ryoma repels a wolf's attack. A wolf with 3 eyes attacks Ryoma, taking his sword. Ryoma is frightened. Wolves surround the guy. Sionji says that he is about to be torn to pieces and asks if God is watching over him, while wishing for God to help. Ryoma changes his mind and says that before, he was constantly looked after and protected, but now things are different. He can handle things on his own. He explains that since he doesn't have a sword, he'll use water and try to imagine a powerful weapon, after which he uses a water bullet. The wolves attack the guy. He screams. Ryoma delivers a powerful blow, sending the wolves flying in all directions with bloody wounds. Ryoma is surprised. The guy sits down. He's glad he managed to do it alone. Ryoma asks if he really got out of the thicket. He says these people belong to a different race and wonders if there are people here. The coachman reports that Ryoma is pretty battered and asks if he's heading to the city of Thales, which is right ahead. Ryoma thinks so. The man offers Ryoma a ride, explaining that if he walks, he won't get there in a day. Ryoma considers this sweet, but can he trust this man? He decides to take him at his word for now, but if anything happens, he'll use magic to protect himself. Ryoma thanks the coachman. The stranger in the carriage says hello and asks if Ryoma is a traveler. The guy says that Ryoma is also heading to Thales and asks him where he is from. Ryoma says he's from the west and asks where Romakuen is from. He asks to be called by his first name. Roma explains that they grew up in a nearby village and decided to go in search of adventure, mentioning that Permi is his childhood friend and a wind mage. Roma says it's time to eat, reaching for the food. The guy asks Ryoma if he's hungry. Ryoma says that he'd rather drink some water and creates a water ball. Ryoma drinks water. Roma and Permi are surprised. Roma says Ryoma is good. Permi asks if Ryoma is a magician too. Ryoma explains that he's just an ordinary traveler. Permi says he just conjured water. She explains that only the most skilled sorcerers can conjure without speaking aloud, and she admires this. Ryoma thinks the self-study guide didn't mention it at all. The coachman is surprised that Ryoma is a water mage. He says water is a very valuable resource, hard to obtain, and if it weren't for water mages, they'd have to climb mountains to replenish their supplies, so they're very grateful. Ryoma says that's cool. Ryoma laughs sheepishly. He thinks they're wrong to think he's a wizard, but he won't try to dissuade them. He announces that they've finally arrived and expresses admiration for the city in the other world, noting that there's a weapons shop there and that everything is bustling with people. The coachman asks what Ryoma plans to do next, and he replies that he'll help them out first as thanks. He unloads the cart, after which the coachman says that seems to be all he's said. The coachman asks if Ryoma has a place to stay. To which he replies that he hasn't decided on a place to spend the night yet. The coachman asks permission to introduce Ryoma to someone. Roma says that if you need anything, you can call him. They work in this town and will definitely meet again. He and the girl wave goodbye. Ryoma notices the building and says it's the very Lunas, who was driving the cart, mentioned. The woman offers a discount since he's Lunas's friend. Ryoma says he's very tired. Ryoma reports that he had a great time, saw the beautiful city, learned how to use magic, and made a couple of good friends. He says he's completely forgotten about the training. The training consisted of leaving the forest and heading to the city, and it's complete. Ryoma explains that as a reward, he was given some kind of bag, which is much roomier than it first appears. Ryoma says that apparently they wear them a lot here, and explains that it's best not to use the equipment in front of others, so the bag is just what he needs. Then he asks what's next on the agenda. The training requires registering with the Adventurers Guild. Ryoma is delighted and says there are guilds here. He understands this. This is a different world. Ryoma explains that today is probably too late and he'll have to wait until tomorrow. He's already impatient. Ryoma says the guild should be around here somewhere. Then he spots a building and announces that this is it. Ryoma reports that this is a real Adventurers Guild and says it's simply amazing. Roma talks about the people around him and says that they have met. He asks if this means that Ryoma is now an adventurer too, and he replies that he didn't even have time to register. Roma says that then he will help and encourages them to follow him. A girl welcomes you to the Thales branch of the Philland Adventurers Guild and announces that her name is Renee, and she handles the registration of newcomers. Renee explains that you need to check your status to be added to the list and asks you to place your hand on a magic ball. Ryoma sighs. He understands what this thing is, that it will reveal his characteristics and abilities, and that if it does, the truth about his race will immediately come to light. The girl asks what it is, and Ryoma asks her to wait. He informs her that if he refuses, he won't be able to complete the training. He tells Renee not to be surprised by the results. Ryoma thinks he simply has no other choice. A bright light illuminates the room. Ryoma asks what happened. He wonders if something happened or if he imagined it. Renee stutters and tries to say something. Ryoma asks him to keep it a secret, and Renee calls him into another room. Ryoma says he's glad there weren't any major problems, but it's all still a hassle. Gimel, the guild leader, enters the room and tells him that Renee told him she wanted to join the demigod guild. Ryoma says he knew it would end this way. Gimel says he'll check this out if Ryoma doesn't mind. Ryoma asks to skip the formalities. Gimel asks him to place his hand on the ball, explaining that it will give more accurate results. A bright light illuminates the room, and Renee and Gimel are shocked. Gimel says Ryoma has been accepted and will now issue the license. Ryoma asks the man to stand up. Gimel says he has no right to disrespect Ryoma, as he is his demigod. The woman apologizes. Renee says that divine blessing can be proven, and there must be some kind of mark on the body. Ryoma asks again about the mark, wondering if she's serious. Ryoma thinks he's received a message from Meshafim. The message says he has a divine mark on his shoulder blade. Ryoma thinks Meshafim has become even more familiar and wonders if all gods are like this. Gimel asks what wonder Ryoma is holding. Ryoma explains that this thing was given to him by a god, who gave him a blessing. Gimel and Renee are surprised. Shar says it's something like that. Ryoma says the divine mark is located just below his shoulder. At least that's what Meshafim said. Renee asks to see. Gimel asks the girl to hold her horses and reminds her that she's a woman, and only he can see. Ryoma says that undressing in front of a girl is truly shameful. Gimel asks him to leave Mr. Ryoma alone and leave the room. Gimel is surprised. Gimel says he has no doubts left. Gimel says he'll greet Ryoma properly and say he'll contact headquarters immediately to request a special license for him. Ryoma asks what special means. Ryoma says a regular one would be fine for him. The man replies that absolutely not, explaining that they have very strict rules. Ryoma asks again. Gimel reports that the Adventurers Guild has existed for over 800 years, founded by Ryotaro Sumeragi, the apostle of the god of creation, and that the guild still enjoys unquestioned authority. Ryoma is surprised that it's another demigod. Renee apologizes for the wait. Ryoma thinks that, judging by his name, he's definitely Japanese. Renee says it's a personal card that will unlock a wider range of functions and allow communication with other apostles. Ryoma thinks the card is shimmering. Light emanates from the card, and Ryotaro says that he is pleased to meet the new demigod. Ryotaro informs him that Ryoma has already heard of him and introduces himself as the guild's founder. Ryoma asks in surprise, "Is it really him?" Ryoma is surprised that this is the guild's founder, noting how young he is, despite the fact that demigods are said to be immortal. Ryotaro asks if Ryoma can hear him and if the connection is bad. Ryoma says he's pleased to meet him and introduces himself as Sionji Ryoma. Ryotaro asks if he's a new apostle and says he looks forward to a long-term partnership. Ryotaro asks which god summoned him to this world. Ryoma explains it's Meshafim, the god of entertainment and pleasure. Ryotaro says that Ryoma is lucky, and he asks again in what sense. Ryotaro explains that he founded the Adventurers Guild long ago so that people could clear the dungeons Meshafim created for fun. He explains that this nearly plunged the entire world into chaos. Ryotaro says he has to run and promises to talk another time. Ryotaro says he'll see Ryoma again. Ryoma thinks the introduction was a bit chaotic. Gimel thinks Ryotaro must be very busy and says that the registration process is now complete. Gimel explains that from now on, Renee will be Ryoma's personal assistant, and if he needs anything, he should contact her or him directly. Ryoma agrees. He thinks it took longer than he expected. Ryoma says he's finally been released and asks if something's wrong. The girl next to him is silent. He says everything's fine. He's already been issued a license, and there were no incidents. The guy says he'll probably take on some simple task. He says to start with collecting medicinal herbs. The man says he's glad to hear that and asks what he plans to do next. The guy says that most of them grow at the edge of the forest and offers to help if needed. The girl says she wants to help too. Ryoma thanks the guys. The top right of the page says there's a quest to catch some monsters. He asks Frida Vogel, and she explains he can complete it once he ranks up. He repeats the word rank with a question. At the bottom right, Frida explains that Ryoma says he will try his best. The man says that this is commendable zeal and suggests giving it his all. The man asks Mr. Himmel to give them an assignment, and he is surprised by the appearance of Ryoma and Perm and asks if they want to catch monsters. He explains that today they are helping each other. The man asks if Ryoma is new to them. Ryoma says that he just registered and gives his name. The guy says he's the one, asks if he's an apostle, then laughs and says it looks like everyone already knows. The man in the last panel sweats and smiles nervously. The man asks them to wait and says he'll call another employee. The young man and woman look on in surprise. The woman asks to see his personal cards and offers to take on a herb-gathering quest, but the boy remains silent. The man says that if Ryoma and Perm see his card, they'll immediately realize who he really is, and explains that he wanted to confess everything to them, but couldn't. The man takes out a card from his holster with the inscription he is Sionji, demigod, guild rank 1. The boy and girl react to this with surprise. The woman wishes Ryoma good luck. Ryoma stands with his back to him. The guy tells Ryoma that he says it's an unpleasant surprise and apologizes for not wanting to deceive them, then suggests abandoning the quest. The man thinks they'll likely want nothing to do with him now and might even start to despise him. The boy asks if he's a demigod. Ryoma says no, he won't. The guy says they don't care who he is, and since they've decided to help, they'll go with him to the end. The man calls Ryoma and Perm by name. Ryoma says he'll rely on them then. He says he's become a demigod, but he's only been in Mura for a short time and doesn't understand much, lacking experience. He explains that's how it all happened. It's a long story. The man tells him to keep an eye out, otherwise monsters will suddenly attack, and advises him to keep his ears open. Ryoma agrees. Ryoma explains that collecting 11 types of herbs in 2 hours is more difficult than he thought. He says it would be a lot easier if they had a map with markings. The monster attacks, and Ryoma is surprised and says he left his sword in his inventory. The man warns Ryoma to duck and strikes the monster. He says his friend is safe. The man calls Ryoma and says it's Frida Vogel, the biggest monsters. The man says they need to run. The woman reports that it's too late and they're surrounded. The woman says they're okay and thanks Perm for saving them. The man asks Ryoma if he has water magic and suggests attacking. The guy says he's not sure he can handle it. Ryoma suggests they work together and destroy the monsters. Ryoma agrees. The girl says she'll create a wind current and distract the enemies, and he says go ahead. He explains that if he's not careful enough, he might accidentally hit the guys, so he needs to focus. The man shouts forward. The boy fights off the creatures flying at him. Ryoma screams his name. Ryoma fires a powerful energy beam, striking the creatures. The boy watches the creatures fly away. In the top panel, two monsters are making sounds. He is silent and surprised. In the bottom panel, he stands between a man and a girl, who raise their hands, and the man announces that they have succeeded. Ryoma thanks her and tells her he should have seen how cool he was, and the girl says she expected nothing less. The man explains that you need to be yourself and not be afraid because Ryoma himself said so. The guy asks if he can say anything else, and Ryoma says yes. The woman says that they fought side by side and are now considered comrades. The guy agrees and says that he is right. He explains that they are now comrades and agrees with this. Ryoma says he'll be staying in Thales for a while and will be dropping by the guild often. Just call him if you need him. The man thanks him again. The man says they definitely need to go somewhere else. The girl says she'll be looking forward to their next meeting. Ryoma agrees and says, he asks how the training is going. The man explains that step 12 is to accept and complete one quest at the Adventurers Guild, and that the reward is 10 divine points and the skill, mana regeneration. He says that's already done and asks what's next. Ryoma says he's almost reached the end and what a great reward. He explains that the final step is to go to the temple and pray, and the reward includes 1,000 divine points, the transfer gate skill, +1 holy, the game master title, and an upgrade. He says he can't figure it out and doesn't understand why he needs all this, and suggests maybe Googling it. He reads that the apostles perform great deeds and gain recognition from believers, which increases their holiness and power, thanks to which they can later become gods. He explains. Ryoma informs them that there's a secret compartment in the temple where a key is hidden. He explains that the key is needed to open the door to the dungeon and warns that there may be traps there. Ryoma tells them to be careful and carefully examine every corner. He says he came but doesn't know how to pray. He says he'll try to do the same as everyone else. Ryoma says that he really is Meshafim, to which Meshafim confirms this. The boy asks why he was summoned to this world. The man explains that he helped fulfill his wish because it was what he wanted. The man explains that he only wants to entertain the boy. Ryoma says that he should have fun with all his heart simply because he is who he is, and announces that he will watch and rejoice with his interlocutor. Then Ryoma says that they will see each other again. He reports that he is back in the temple. He is looking at a statue of a boy on a pedestal. He and two men are kneeling and praying. Ryoma says what it means to have fun from the heart, and agrees. Ryoma says that it seems like he's being watched all the time. Ryoma puts his hand on his bag. In the right panel, a man announces that the training is over and it's time to collect the reward. In the middle panel, he looks at his phone in surprise. In the top panel, a girl quickly walks away from the building. Ryoma reports that the phone is missing and asks what happened. He looks at the phone, which is emitting light and a magical symbol. He says he no longer has to worry about losing his phone, as he only needs to think about it to get it, and it's very convenient. He explains that he doesn't have to strain to get the phone anymore. He explains that by upgrade he meant adding new features. Ryoma mentions new quests and asks if they're daily assignments. He explains that such tasks quickly become addictive, and that first you need to defeat 5 monsters, trying to combine business with pleasure, and accept a similar quest from the guild. Ryoma informs that the training is over and the woman tells Ryoma to destroy 10 goblins. He stands on the road by the trees. The goblins attack with swords. Ryoma deflects their blows and kills 2 goblins in one move. Ryoma reports that it's no problem for him to kill a couple of goblins. The guy says he doesn't like extracting magic stones, but he has to do it or he won't complete the task, and then screams for help. Ryoma reports that someone is screaming for help. Ryoma fights off several monsters. He stabs the wolf, piercing him with a spear. The girl reports that he is wounded. Ryoma says he thinks he had a healing potion somewhere and asks if the injured man is okay, urging him to hold on. Ryoma then tells him to drink the potion. The wounded man tries to do so. Ruin thanks for the help and says he is a novice traveler. He says no thanks are needed and gives his name. The guy thanks Ryoma for saving his life and offers to repay him. Ryoma says he'll do anything for him, and the man replies, okay. The man says that, judging by everything, this guy won't leave him alone, and says, God bless him. He offers to play a game and asks how it sounds, to which the other guy agrees. The man explains that since things are this way, it's a way to kill two birds with one stone, as he needs to try something out. The sign Game Master appears. The man explains that this is a fragment of the power of the god of entertainment himself, allowing one to win any game, but if one loses, the stake will be forcibly confiscated. The man explains that this ability can expose any cheater, and it's up to Ryo to decide whether to use it. Ryoma says the rules are simple. Guess whether the coin will land on heads or tails, and suggests flipping a coin. The man asks what Ryoma is betting on, and Ryoma says heads. He says it's tails. He announces that he thinks he's won. He explains that he figured out how it works. The other guy asks if he can do it again. He replies that of course. Ryoma reports that the coin landed on tails, but he managed to change it to heads, so the outcome of the game depends entirely on him. He explains that he'll now try to get Ruin to win 5 times in a row, which will give him a chance to see if he can play against him. He offers to gamble on something and puts up a magic stone, and Ryuin says it's a bunch of healing herbs. Ryuin says he'll get heads and he says tails. Ryuin says he's won, and he's happy. Ryoma reveals that this is the very stone he placed on Khan, and explains that the stone fell into Ryu's hands, meaning it will be forcibly confiscated. Ryoma explains that this ability must be used wisely, as it is a double-edged sword. Ryoma tells E, expressing surprise. He thanks her for the game and says that such gratitude is quite sufficient. The man, indignantly, says that this is not enough and says that he also received a magic stone. The man suggests that they return to the city, but someone asks them to wait for him. The waitress asks Ryoma if he's finished his report and if he'd like to have lunch together, to which Ryoma replies that it sounds good. Ryoma tells him that the food here is delicious, and the guy adds that the rooms are cheap and this tavern is a godsend for newcomers like. The guy says he won't be able to help today because he has things to do. He explains that he'll be free tomorrow and can help. Ryoma informs him that he can now collect rewards for quests. He's accumulated a fair amount of divine points and is leveling up his magical power. The boy asks Ryoma what kind of magical device it is. He asks if it's a magical device like the ones they use in the guild, and the girl explains that it's something like this. The guy on the bed says it's great and that he wants to buy something like that too. He replies that in that case. Ryoma says, how about a part-time job? The guy repeats the word part-time job with a question. He explains that it's some kind of quest. The guy says he'll be hunting goblins, and he'll extract magic stones from them. The guy says they'll then sell the stones and split the profits equally. Ryoma says no problem, he just needs to upgrade his equipment, so he won't refuse such an offer. He says he'll start tomorrow, and the boy agrees. He says he'll go hunting right away in the morning, then explains that since he's accumulated a lot of divine points, it would be nice to acquire new skills. He says great. He lies in bed and looks. It is reported that it wouldn't hurt to also increase mana for peace of mind. Then earth magic, wind magic, and fire magic are listed. Ryoma says he thinks that's enough for now and explains that he feels his power growing. He looks at an app called Fairy Garden on his phone screen. The girl says it looks like a mobile game. The screen shows an interface titled Fairy Garden and buttons for Fairy List, Gacha, Inventory, and Shop. Ryoma says it's a free spin and, judging by everything, it's some kind of Tamagotchi. He explains that it's a fairy king, probably super rare, and asks what to name it. Ryoma comes up with the name Fanon and says that from now on, it's Fanon. Rio. He says the herb is from the fairy island and asks if the girl wants something from him as a gift. The girl explains that she can give something in return and says he should be happy too. The man is surprised and asks if the girl is playing around, and then says that he really can get something. Ryoma says good morning and says that it's the next morning, and the guy asks if he played all night long. He says that he will go and exterminate the goblins, and the man says that in the meantime he will run a few errands in the city and says goodbye until the evening. Ryoma reports that the map shows where monsters gather and that there should be a goblin nest among them. Then he says that he found it. The man says this is what you need. Ryoma reports that there are quite a few goblins here, but they're all weak, and explains that he'll try to gather them in one spot and defeat them with one blow. Ryoma says it's time to go. He throws rocks at the monsters, hitting them in the head and chest. The club-wielding monsters prepare to attack, but he quickly retreats. He says they're caught. Ryoma says it's as easy as pie. One of the monsters says it's the boss. The man screams. Then he says that he will not give up so easily and delivers a powerful blow to the monster. Ryoma delivers a blow that makes the opponent fall and says that he was already scared, and that's all. He says that they will deal with the bodies later, but for now let them lie in the inventory. Ryoma reports that this large goblin has evolved into a hobgoblin, and all information about it is contained in the Monsterpedia. He explains that leaving the nest untouched will result in even more goblins appearing, which will have dire consequences, and that it will have to be dealt with for the sake of everyone. He says it's divine magic. He explains that it allows you to create a stream of light capable of repelling any attack and healing serious wounds and illnesses. It can also be used to illuminate any place, so that no monsters will dare set foot there again. He reports that Ryoma says that this place is now sacred. He says that even the air has become cleaner, and that's wonderful. He reports that he completed the quest and received telekinesis as a reward. He explains that he needs to try out the new ability immediately. Ryoma says it works, you just have to imagine his magical power enveloping the object, and then, he reports that the sword hovers in the air. He says it's so much fun and now he can fight without even touching a weapon. Then he announces that it's time to wrap things up. The man makes a puffing sound. Ryoma says let's stop somewhere around here. Ryoma says they'll work together, it'll be done faster. Ryoma is surprised. Ryoma says it's the most amazing thing. Ryoma says, Mommy! He explains that if the corpses aren't removed from the road, the smell will attract more monsters, and says they need to be burned. The man explains that he has a fire and will take care of it. He says that while he's busy burning, the man should check to see if anyone is still alive. Ryoma claims to be the one who destroyed the hobgoblin's nest. The man adds that Ryoma is apparently a seasoned adventurer who single-handedly dealt with an entire horde of monsters. He says it wasn't hard at all, he just stood a little further away and used magic. The guy says it's still incredible, and he says, "Oh, come on." The guy says he picked some berries along the way and offers them to him, and he thanks him and says he's a little hungry. Ryoma says they're finally done, and all that's left is to get to the city and sell the goods to the guild. He says he can't even imagine how much money they'll make. The top right shows a building against the sky. He says there are 2,132 binas in total. He and the girl react to this amount and the girl says how much. The man asks Ryoma for a minute, explaining that he has something important to tell him. Ryoma agrees. The man asks what happened, noting that it looks serious. Ryoma hands the man the money, saying it's his share. The man thanks him and says that with days like these, he says that His Majesty wishes to see him. The man asks if he would agree and informs Ryoma that he has a choice. The man explains that, in general, he does, and that his status as a demigod is higher than that of the king. Ryoma says that even if that's the case, it would be rude to refuse. He explains that if he wants to live and work peacefully in this kingdom, it's best not to anger the ruler. He says that he will have to meet with him after all. The man says okay, so be it. Ryoma says he'll need a little time around noon the day after tomorrow to gather his courage. The man says he understands and will take care of everything, and suggests they come to the guild when they're ready. Ryoma thanks the man for his help. He says that a royal audience is no joke. The woman reports that they are looking for the young man they were with last night and that Mr. Ruin is waiting for him upstairs. The sound of a door opening can be heard in the background. Ryoma says he even rented a room for them and calls it an act of kindness. He says he's never seen the guildmaster address anyone with such respect. He asks who he is. He explains that it's better to tell Ruin the truth, and is surprised to see guild rank 1. Ryoma says he doesn't attach much importance to apostles. The boy asks if he's the new apostle. Ryoma explains that there's no need for formalities and to address him as before, since they're friends now. The boy exclaims about the great apostle and admits he's a fool. He says that if he is treated like a stranger, he will be very lonely. The man replies, "Oh." Ryoma says he shouldn't look at him like that. The man asks to be called by his name. Ryoma agrees and offers him something to eat, and the man says he'd be happy to, but first he needs to do something. He says there's so much here that it's overwhelming. At the top right, it says this is a gun shop. Ryoma asks for help choosing equipment, and the man agrees without any problem. Ryoma explains that he can't decide which sword to buy, and the man asks what he likes. Ryoma says he's amazed by the selection and loves things like that. He says he doesn't know much about it, but it's better to take that sword. The man points to the sword and advises taking it. The boy greets Ryoma, who reciprocates. The man asks Ryoma if he's looking for a new weapon, to which Ryoma replies that his old sword broke in a fight with the orcs. Ryuin explains that Roma is him and Ryuin is Roma, and says he's an adventurer and a good friend. Roma asks Ryuma to help Ryuin pick out his gear, as he's not sure he can handle it, to which Ryuma replies that it's easy. Ryoma says that if he were in his interlocutor's shoes, he'd take a small round shield or iron bracers, explaining that if he prefers to defend himself, it's better to take a shield, and if he prefers to attack, bracers. The man thanks him for the advice and says he'll buy those instead. He says that new bracers wouldn't hurt, but the old ones are worn out. The guy says he doesn't have enough money for new ones, and Ryoma says he'll buy them when these ones fall apart completely. The man remains silent. He says that he will then allow her to give him a gift for helping Ruin. The man says that it is not worth it. Ryoma says he doesn't want his friend to get hurt and wants him to have reliable equipment. The man replies that's fine and thanks him. He says he'll buy a couple of vials of healing potion and asks to use them wisely. The guy thanks him and says he won't waste them thoughtlessly. Ryoma says it's quite cozy here. The guy says he even feels awkward sitting here. Ryoma says that during his stay in Mura, he noticed that the local taverns mostly serve meat, and he wonders what they offer here. He says what? The man asks what is it, him, and why he is so surprised. The girl laughs and says she had no doubt Ryoma would appreciate the uniqueness of this dish, since it was created by the apostle Hana Higuchi. She explains that she has created many different dishes, founded this restaurant, and made a fortune. He says that now it's clear where the onigiri comes from, and that she's also Japanese. The woman thanks him for waiting. Ryoma says the dish looks amazing. The man says it's a burger with fries and a side of spaghetti with vegetables. The man explains that it's the restaurant's signature dish. The girl says it's absolutely amazing. He explains that the steak is very tender and definitely meaty. The man says the sandwich is also amazing. He can't believe they make something so delicious in this world. The guy says the pasta is finger-licking good. The girl says she's so happy, and Ryoma says Higuchi-sama is a genius and agrees. Ryoma thinks the guys are very happy and wishes there were more such pleasant moments. The girl asks Permi what she did today. The guy explains that he'll fight at full strength to protect the girl and asks her not to overexert herself. He laughs. The man says he'd like to have comrades like him. Ryoma invites them to join him, explaining that they were once newbies too and that there's nothing wrong with that, and that together they can do anything. The guy says he's a newbie and asks if he can join. The guy says thank you very much and says he will try his best. The man says great, he stands silently nearby. The girl says, oh, by the way, and then asks Ryoma if he's mastered divine magic. Ryoma says he's so caring and considerate. He asks if he uses divine magic. The girl explains that only apostles can use it, and explains that divine magic not only heals wounds, but also removes curses, and can also be used to summon angels and resurrect the dead. He says. The guy says that they've been sitting around too long, and Ryoma asks to pay them off, please. The guy asks for forgiveness from afar. The man apologizes to Ryoma and says he shouldn't have brought it up right there in the restaurant. The girl also asks for forgiveness. Ryoma says he's not angry at all and shouldn't have been so upset about it. The man and woman react to his words. He says that since this is how it turned out, next time they will show him another good cafe, and they agree on this. The girl says that she will go looking for him as soon as possible. Ryoma and the guy listen to her. The girl says she has plans for tomorrow, so the three of them will go on a mission. The man wishes the guys good luck. The man thanks them for everything and says he'll see them again. He says he's completely calm now, although the day was stressful but fun, and there were worries about the upcoming. The woman announces that they have arrived and that this is the Parliament building where the meeting will take place. Ryoma says it looks impressive. Men and women simultaneously greet Ryoma, saying they are glad to see the great apostle. He responds by saying he doesn't understand what is happening. Gallo reports that he has been assigned to accompany him and asks to follow him. The man says it's customary because he's a demigod. Ryoma says he's being greeted with too much pomp and yet he's still embarrassed. The door opens with a characteristic creak. The man invites them to sit down. Marquis Gaffer thanks the great apostle for honoring them with his presence and introduces himself as the head of House Soil and the representative of His Majesty. Duke Sanamaru introduces himself as the head of House Sanson. Gimel announces that he is the head of the Thales branch of the Adventurers Guild, and next to him, Renee says that they are accompanying the apostle Ryoma. Ryoma explains that it is his turn to introduce himself and says that he has been blessed by the god Meshafim. The man and the boy react to this. The man reports that the king has ordered a message to be conveyed, and he speaks clearly. The man explains that the current ruler of Fin and Ruolo welcomes Ryoma and considers welcoming the apostle into the kingdom a great honor for himself and all his subjects, and therefore requests a fitting reception. The man says these are gifts from His Majesty. He asks to visit his palace someday and hopes to establish a strong friendship, inviting them to enjoy their stay as much as they wish. Ryoma asks if he can take some herbs, to which the men reply, "Of course." One of the men explains that these are herbs from the fairy island, leaves fallen from the world tree, and slender branches, and offers him a vial of healing potion. Ryoma thanks them and says, the man says that the king will be very happy to receive these priceless treasures. He asks if he can ask for a letter to be delivered to the king, and the man answers in the affirmative. Ryoma thanks King Ruolo for the invitation and generous gifts, promises to visit the capital soon, and sends a return gift as a token of his appreciation. The man vows to deliver the letter to His Majesty at any cost, after which the other man thanks him and says he can take his leave. The woman asks if she can see the contents of the papers attached to the king's gifts, and he answers affirmatively. The man says he must note that they behaved well, explaining that he was overwhelmed. The man explains that the first document grants the owner the right to purchase a mansion in the center of the royal capital, the second grants the owner the right to use a magical flying machine, and the third is an agreement. Ryoma says the word agreement. The man informs you that your recognition as a divine apostle guarantees your safety on the territory of Philland, and any manifestation of hostility towards you will be regarded as a direct insult to the entire ruling family. The man reports that His Majesty provides Ryoma with his full and unconditional support. Ryoma reacts with surprise. The man explains that the fate of the kingdom is closely tied to his own, but he's unsure he's ready to take on such a heavy responsibility. He says it requires serious consideration. The man asks Meshafim. Ryoma asks if they're going home, and the woman says she'll arrange for a carriage and asks if they plan to do anything upon their return. Ryoma says he'd like to visit a certain place. He asks if they have arrived and says that this is the hall of the Merchant Guild. Ryoma says that King Izo is doing everything he can to make his life easier, and since he's so generous with his money, he'll buy himself a house. The man greets him, revealing that he's Marunik, the head of the Merchant Guild, and is very pleased to meet Apostle Ryoma. Rio. He asks if his interlocutor knows, To which the man explains that awareness is the most important quality of any merchant, and asks how he can serve. Ryoma says he'd like to buy a plot of land or a house, noting that a person with business acumen is immediately recognizable. The man says let's discuss their wishes and budget first and asks them to follow him. The man allows several options to be proposed. He examines the plans and says that a 3-story house with a garden, 20 rooms, and a large basement fully meets his requirements, and he will probably settle on it. The man says it's best not to delay buying truly valuable things, adding that this magnificent mansion costs only 6 ingots. Ryoma reports that it happened so quickly. The man says that if they want, they could hire servants for Ryoma and thinks that each of them could be paid 600 binas, which is a very respectable salary. He asks to find him 2 maids, a manager, and a butler with a monthly salary of 1,000 binas. Ryoma says he'll show him the property now. The man thanks him for his patience and explains that this is Mr. Ryoma's new estate. Ryoma says, "Wow!" The man says he really likes and admires the decor, which is beyond praise. He says that all their homes should be cozy, bright, and clean. That's their main principle. The man says he's flattered. The man says the servants will arrive tomorrow, and he replies, Ryoma announces that he now has his own home. He explains that the Gates of Movement app allows you to set teleportation points anywhere convenient, and advises that if you like the mansion, you can set up a teleport there, but be careful not to stray too far from it. He says he completely forgot he had this cool app and should have used it more often. He explains that if he had, he probably wouldn't have been able to help Ruin, so every cloud has a silver lining. Ruimeria says it's nice to meet you. Mariana and Gions ask you to take care of them, and Velnan also asks you to take care of them. The man says he brought the servants as promised, and Ryoma says okay. The man explains that here's the contract, which specifies all the terms of employment. He asks everyone to familiarize themselves with the layout of the mansion and the daily routine, which includes getting up and preparing breakfast at 6 o'clock, breakfast, grocery shopping and preparing lunch at 7 o'clock, lunch, running various errands, cleaning and preparing dinner at 12 o'clock, dinner at 1800 hours. The young man informs them that they will have 3 breaks during the day, at 9 in the morning, in the afternoon, and at 3 in the afternoon. The man is surprised that there are 3 and asks if it's different. The young man explains that before, they had to work from early morning until late at night, until the masters left. Ryoma says that's no good if you're tired or sick. It's better to rest. There's no need to force yourself to work until you're exhausted. The 4 servants thank him from the bottom of their hearts. On the right page, a maid serves Ryoma a plate of food, and he says it looks delicious. On the left page, a man tells the maid that the stairs need to be thoroughly cleaned, and the maid explains that she's already started cleaning. The guy says he's glad he's found such diligent guys, and he can entrust them with most of the work and take a break. Ryoma says he needs to check on the fairy garden and the daily quests, and suggests they complete a quest. He says that he has warned the servants about his absence and now he can leave. He asks what this is. Ryoma says it looks like a temple pillar and asks if it's the entrance to a dungeon, adding that people walk right through it. Then Ryoma touches the pillar and says, "Cave." He says welcome to his dungeon. He presses the doorbell. Ryoma announces that he's slightly improved the system, which now creates resources, items, and monsters by absorbing the unstable energy of the collapsing world, and generally suggests having fun. Ryoma says it sounds a bit weird, but he'll try not to think about it. He says that it wouldn't hurt to take a good look around first. He says that a monster is approaching. Ryoma delivers a powerful blow to the enemy. Ryoma announces that he won't even have to open the enemy's belly. He'll collect the loot and continue moving forward. He says he's already collected quite a lot of things and asks what else it is. He then opens the treasure chest. The man falls to his death, after which he says in horror that it's a corpse. Ryoma breathes heavily and screams, then clings to the wall, continuing to breathe heavily and saying he's tired. He says he was so scared that he ran without looking where he was going. Ryoma says that, damn it, he shouldn't enjoy this and asks that for today. He says we need to get out of here quickly. He sighs. The man reports that the adventure party has arrived. Thank God. He notices it, The guy apologizes and asks to be shown which way the exit is. The man abruptly asks if he wants to die because he went into the dungeon practically empty-handed. The woman explains that he is a newbie. The guy says that he is coming down here for the first time. Ryoma says they were about to leave, but will take the other person with them. He then says that next time they should bring a map, to which the other person repeats the word map. He says he has a card and says he completely forgot about it. Ryoma says he was an only child, but his friend Takefumi was like a sister to him and played with him a lot. Ryoma explains that this is how it is. The man says she treated him like a little brother, but he says he used to think of her as an older sister. The text block states that later, Ryoma says he wants to save this girl. He says he doesn't care if they find out he's a demigod. Ryoma calls the girl Azusa-chan. He says he can try to cure his sister. The man asks how he plans to treat her and says that even the clerics couldn't help, but he thinks he can. He asks her to promise not to tell anyone what they're about to see. The man and the elf react. The guy says, "Hey, what's wrong?" The man orders them to immediately kneel before them. Ryoma says that this is a sacred being from the top of the universe, the great apostle. He tells Seldion to stand up and informs him that the others don't have to bow. The boy expresses surprise. The boy asks Ryoma if it's true that apostles can heal any ailment and if he's capable of the same. Ryoma replies that he is, although he's never tried it before. The man and the girl are surprised. The boy apologizes for his recent rudeness and begs for help for Ryard's sister, asking her to save Mizari. He says he'll do everything he can. The man tells his sister that he's returned and brought someone amazing. The woman tells Ryoma that he shouldn't give her false hope. This disease is incurable, only the inevitable can be delayed, and she has already resigned herself to that. Ryoma says he's glad to meet her and tells her about the man who will cure her. The man greets Ryora and asks. The man says that Ryora is going out of her way to help and asks her to believe in him. The girl calls him Lord Ryoma. He tells her that the gods have granted him the power to cure the girl's illness. She agrees. Ryoma says, "Let's begin then." Several people in raincoats look at what's happening in surprise. The girl notices that her eyes are watering and says that her eyes hurt. Ryoma reports that he can see again and can finally see Ryo's face. Ryo says that Ryoma has grown so big and strong and thanks him for caring for him all this time, hugging him. The elf says it's a real miracle, and he says he can't believe it. The man and the girl smile and hold hands. Ryoma says they will now live as happily and harmoniously as before. The man explains that he expects no reward for his help, as it was done voluntarily, and says he never thought he would rejoice so much at someone else's happiness. Ryoma says it's wonderful. 3 days after using divine magic, Mizari had fully recovered and was no longer experiencing any ailments, but he asked her to contact him through the guild if anything went wrong. He then visited Renee and told her that he had bought a house and was visiting for the first time. Lately, there's been a noticeable increase in the number of people wanting to meet the apostle, which greatly worries the man in the suit. He reports that the guild is fighting them off as best they can, and is grateful for this to Ryoma, who says they'll have to repay the favor 100-fold. It is reported that all the daily quests have been completed, and Fanon is well-fed and content. Ryoma explains that only the most difficult divine quests remain, and he will take them on someday. Ryoma is surprised and asks what that is, then sees an urgent quest and exclaims. He reports that the moving red dot is a wyvern approaching Thales, and asks if the counter indicates how long it will take the monster to reach the city. He explains that Gimel needs to be warned as soon as possible so he can request reinforcements. The husband. The man says the matter is urgent. Ryoma says a wyvern is approaching the city. The man and Ryoma react to this news. He says that he asks for forgiveness but wonders how the interlocutor knows this, and asks who he is. The man informs Mr. Vannon that the apostle Ryoma stands before him. Ryoma says that the hero Vannon is at their service and is very pleased to meet them. Mr. Vannon explains that he is the demigod everyone is talking about. He says it's mutual. The man asks if they were able to track the wyvern thanks to the device. The guy confirms that they did. The man reports that a small flock of dragons is flying from the west, and he estimates they will be here in about 5 days. Ryoma says that now it is clear where they are. He reports that the nesting season is approaching, and most likely the wyverns are looking for places rich in food. The man says that this is bad because they have almost reached the city of Fortu, and if they do not stop in its vicinity, they will definitely attack. Ryoma says that unfortunately he won't be able to teleport such a long distance and asks how long it will take to reach the fort. The man explains that the journey will take 2 days on the fastest steed, and given the wyvern's speed, it's unlikely he'll be able to outrun it. He says that they can't sit idly by either, and so they'll have to fight off the attack on the outskirts of the city. The man stands silently nearby. Vannon says he'll help and believes the hero and the apostle will somehow cope with this difficult task. The hero thanks Vannon, and Vannon explains that he doesn't deserve thanks. He's simply doing his duty. Ryoma says that it is time to set off and orders Gimel to harness the horses, and then says that he will immediately send a message to the neighboring branch and ask them to send people for help. He says that the black rectangle that was used is some kind of magical artifact, and he says that it seems to be so. Ryoma says that he has heard that the apostles have unique abilities and all sorts of interesting things, and asks if it is true. The boy asks Vannon what exactly it means to be a hero, and Vannon explains that heroes are usually those who have managed to overcome the 100th level and move on to the next stage of evolution. Ryoma says it's incredible and asks what level the other person is. The other person reports that they're currently level 381. Ryoma says the other person is still very young, which is amazing. He reveals that he is already 84 years old and explains that once you become superhuman, you begin to age more slowly, so he has hardly changed since he was 24. He says this in response to an indignant exclamation. Ryoma explains that, given the fact that superhumans live for centuries, he can be considered a youth. Ryoma explains that he became a demigod by chance, while heroes like Vannon spend their entire lives working to surpass the limits of human capabilities, and such perseverance is worthy of sincere respect. He says that he is still just learning and is trying to follow the example of such glorious people as Vannon. Vannon says that he will never compare to them, the great apostle. The guy says they're almost there. The woman screams for them to run and run away. A man warns Ryoma and another boy that the city is dangerous and that there's a huge wyvern there, so they need to turn back. Ryoma and the boy react with surprise. The man explains that they were fully armed after receiving the message, but were unable to fight back and were forced to retreat to cover. He informs them that they have come to slay the wyvern and asks them to hide in a safe place. The man replies that it is fine. The image contains no speech bubbles or text for retelling. It depicts a battle scene where the dragon delivers a powerful blow, causing destruction and flying debris. Ryoma reports that he missed the first time. Then he says the enemy is lying and won't escape. The man explains that now they can use a wind barrier that won't destroy the city despite the wyvern's rampage. He says, "Fight." The man says there are 2 creatures left and suggests continuing in the same spirit to kill them all. In the top panel, the man attacks the dragon with a sword. Ryoma reports that the dragons feel threatened and are afraid to descend, noting that half a day has already passed. The man screams and then abruptly rises up. He explains that it will be difficult to fight at full strength while under the dome, but if it is removed, the wyverns will scatter. Ryoma says the dragons are distracted by something outside and asks what it is. Ryoma looks up at the flying dragons. He says he'll check the map. The man explains that movement has been detected outside the barrier and asks if the reinforcements Gimel mentioned might have arrived. Ryoma informs that they cannot rely only on their own strength, because it will soon run out, and they will have to remove the barrier to allow the warriors to join the battle, although it is dangerous, but there is no other way out. The boy says even a wyvern couldn't withstand this. The man and girl look at the dragons, and the man says he'll blow her away like a sheaf of pellets. Ryoma delivers a powerful blow that sends the dragon flying back, spraying blood. He reports that there's only 1 living wyvern left. The rest can no longer take to the air, and victory is only a matter of time. He stands before a huge dragon. The man with the sword explains that he's let his guard down. Ryoma strikes the dragon, which falls down, destroying its surroundings. Ryoma watches the attack unfold. The man watches the dragon take damage. He says that's it. A group of people rejoice in their victory. The man explains the situation. The top right panel depicts a destroyed city. To its left, a man screams in pain, clutching a wounded man. Further to the left, a woman with short hair tries to help the wounded. And in the foreground, several people lie on the ground, one asking for a hand, another asking if everything is all right. Ryoma reports that the monsters have been destroyed, but the dead cannot be brought back. He explains that all that remains is to pray for the departed and hopes that their families will find the strength to move on. The girl says, "Rest in peace." He says it's a divine light, and the man asks what it is. He explains that the light is spreading over the city. Ryoma says he seems to remember that they killed all the wyverns, and then the man asks where he is and says, "Oh." The woman says he's awake. The man asks how he feels. Loudon says he's the local mayor and expresses his sincere gratitude for saving the city. Ryoma says it's not bad, and explains that, on the contrary, it's even gotten better. The man asks to get up for God's sake and asks how things are after the disaster. He answers. Ryoma remains silent. The man reports that about half the city's inhabitants perished, and the city itself was almost completely destroyed. The woman explains that thanks to the miracle they performed, they were at least able to say goodbye to the fallen. The man reports that Ryoma's power helped heal the wounded, and despite everything, the people weren't broken by the grief of loss. On the contrary, their will to live is stronger than ever. He says it's clear. He asks if he can go outside. The guy tells them to put this thought aside for later and it's better to rest today, and then explains that after they demonstrated their power, all the townspeople realized that they were an apostle, and if they showed themselves to them now, they would not leave them alone. Ryoma says they now know who he really is. The man says it's really best for him to keep a low profile for now. The man says he'll be returning to the capital soon. He says it was a great honor to fight alongside him and asks that he not hesitate to ask for help. The man reciprocates. Ryoma says Vannon is an experienced warrior and a reliable comrade. He also possesses incredible strength, but doesn't brag about it, which is admirable. Ryoma hopes that their paths will cross again someday. He says it was an urgent quest that comes with a reward. He says 150,000 divine points is pretty good and suggests installing some new app. He notices an app called Library. Ryoma says it would be great if you could read novels on your phone. He notes that there are self-help books on magic, historical treatises, alchemical manuscripts, but not a single book from his world. Ryoma is surprised that this was possible. The man says that if you really want to read a manga, he says that's it, and is surprised that they give 50,000 points for installing the app. He says that since Meshafim himself recommended it, then fine, and continues tapping the phone. Ryoma informs them that 10,000 divine points are required to launch the My Cozy World app and asks if they want to continue. Ryoma says there's also an activation fee. He says that it seems that he was cheated and tells that the drinking went very badly. Ryoma says a week here in Mura is just a moment, so he can fully enjoy his favorite activity. Ryoma says it's simply perfect and thanks Meshafim. He says he can't believe he won't have to give up his hobbies forever and how much he missed them. A week later, he reports that they had a great time and now he can help people. Ryoma announces that he plans to build an orphanage here and explains that he will take on all the expenses and hassle. The woman thanks him. The man reports that people from nearby settlements come to help every day, so there are enough workers, and if things continue like this, the city will be rebuilt quickly. 3 men approach Ryoma, call him sir, and ask if they can talk to him. Ryoma replies that they can. He tells her that a disaster has occurred in the city, destroying houses and streets. The man says the situation is very serious and requires immediate action. The young man explains that it is necessary to urgently organize aid for the victims and restore infrastructure. The woman says she is ready to help coordinate the work and support. Lowell says they come from a church that worships all gods. Aizen thanks Ryoma for agreeing to condescend to them, and Ryoma says yeah and thinks it's pretentious. The man says they are still mourning the victims of the recent tragedy and praying for the repose of their souls, and wants to offer support to the city on behalf of his church. Ryoma says this would be very helpful and will help the townspeople return to normal life more quickly. The man explains that they would like to build a temple in the fort, right on the spot where Ryoma and his companions performed the miracle. He says he's not really against it and asks what Loudon has to say. Loudon says he doesn't mind. The man explains that if there's a shrine to the Apostle Rima in Fort, people will be even more inspired. There'll be no shortage of parishioners, and donations will be made. The inscription says a month has passed. Ryoma says that's it. The three men thank him for his help. The temple's construction was reportedly completed in a very short time. As soon as it was publicly announced, pilgrims flocked to it from all towns and villages, and a little later, Fort began to flourish again. Ryoma says that since there is nothing else to worry about, it is time to return to Thales as he is homesick. A woman asks the great apostle to touch her child. A man tells the apostle to take some vegetables for the journey. Several people approach the apostle, who extends his hand. Ryoma says, at least just shake their hand, asks for a blessing and to eat with them. The man says he's had enough for today. The woman exclaims, Apostle! The girl reports that there's a crowd at the gates of the mansion again, and now a whole line of admirers is following her, making life unbearable. He says it looks like he'll have to lay low, and then decisively declares that's how it's going to be. Ryoma announces that he will be traveling to the royal capital, San Angeles, and will be staying there for a while. He explains that the king has been waiting for him there for a long time, and now Vannon has arrived as well, and he would be happy to meet them. Ryoma hands over money for food and household needs and asks for a present. He reports that he left before sunrise to avoid attracting unnecessary attention. On the way, he stopped by the guild to tell Gimel everything and ask him to take care of the consequences.